Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into one of the darkest chapters in human history. Not through textbooks, not through sanitized timelines, but through the eyes of someone who lived it. You've heard of the transatlantic slave trade, right? Ships, chains, plantations, the usual bullet points. Yeah, forget all that. This isn't a history lesson. This is what it felt like to be stolen, to be marched barefoot for days, to be packed into a ship so tightly you couldn't sit, couldn't breathe, couldn't scream loud enough to matter, to be sold, renamed, worked, whipped, broken, but never completely. Tonight, you're not watching history. You're inside it. This is the terrifying, unfiltered, soul-ripping truth of the Middle Passage. And by the end of this video, you won't just know what happened. You'll feel it. So, before you get too cozy, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this strange little corner of quiet storytelling. And drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's strangely comforting to know who else is drifting off with us around the world. Now get comfortable, let the day melt away, and we'll drift back together into the quiet corners of the past. It begins with birdsong, the kind that fills the sky before the heat sets in. The sun climbs gently, casting long shadows from the baobab trees. Smoke curls from cook fires. You hear your little brother's feet slapping against the earth as he chases a goat through the dusty clearing. Your mother is already grinding millet, her hands steady, her rhythm ancient. Life here is not soft. There is hunger in the dry seasons and sickness after the rains. But it is yours. It is familiar. The air smells like roasted corn, wood smoke, and damp soil. You know every path through the brush, every face in the village. You know what safety feels like, until the sky goes quiet. There's no warning, not really, just a sudden stillness, like the earth has sucked in its breath and forgotten how to exhale. The birds stop singing, the wind stills, even the goats fall silent. Then come the dogs, barking, frantic, not in play but in fear. And then come the screams. They pour from the edge of the trees like a nightmare, faceless at first in the morning light. Men, dozens. Their skin gleams with oil and sweat, and in their hands are weapons you've only heard about in whispered stories. Long blades, iron shackles, powder-filled tubes that bark like thunder. Some wear cloths like yours, others wear the coats of foreigners. You don't understand what they yell, but it doesn't matter. Their meaning is clear. Run. Your father grabs your arm, shoves you toward the bush. Go, he shouts, and for a second, you think maybe you will. Maybe your feet will fly fast enough. But your legs betray you. They freeze, rooted in shock. You hear a scream that belongs to your mother, and a crack that doesn't sound like a tree branch. It sounds like a rib. You don't remember being caught. 1 minute you're standing, the next you're on the ground, your cheek pressed into gravel, the wind knocked from your lungs. A man's knee pins your back. Something cold and heavy snaps around your wrists. The smell of iron and sweat clogs your nose. You're not a child anymore. You're not anyone. You're property now. The village burns behind you. Huts collapse in flames. Smoke claws at the sky. Somewhere in the chaos you see your neighbor's daughter, blood on her legs, her face blank as a broken drum. A boy you used to wrestle with lies twisted near the well, mouth open like he's mid-laugh, but there's no sound. Only more fire, more shouting, more crackling ropes of grief. They march you out before the sun reaches its peak. Chains clink with every step. Your feet trip over roots and stones. When someone falls, they're whipped, not for punishment, but for example. Eyes forward, heads down. The line stretches behind you like a spine snapped across the land. Men, women, children, everyone bound, everyone trembling, everyone stripped down to the bare idea of being. You don't speak. No one does. Language has vanished. Even the elders walk with eyes glazed, unable to call on gods fast enough to stop what's happening. You start to wonder if maybe the gods turned their backs this morning, or if they ever listened at all. The men who took you are not all strangers. Some are from neighboring tribes. Some used to trade at your market. You recognize a face. He avoids your gaze. You try to hate him, but all you feel is the weight of your own arms, too tired to lift, too tightly bound to move. You walk for hours, then days. Your feet blister. You drink from mud puddles when allowed. You watch a boy collapse beside a termite mound and never rise again. His mother doesn't cry. She just keeps walking. Crying is something that belonged to the old world, the one that ended at sunrise. At night, you lie in rows, chained to strangers. The insects find you first, then the hunger. You dream of your mother's voice, but it's fading fast, already buried beneath the sound of boots and iron. You think of home, but what was home? A place you'll never see again. A name no one will use again. The past has become dangerous. Even memory feels like a trap. By the time you hear the ocean, you no longer feel your ankles. Salt thickens the air. You taste it before you see it. And when you do, it's not the sea that captures your attention. It's the ships. Massive things. Floating beasts with black bellies and ropes like spider webs. The men call them factories of flesh. You don't understand the words, but you know their meaning. You're not here to fish. You're here to vanish. And just like that, the door of the world you knew closes. The sky is still silent. Only now, so are you. The chain is heavier than it looks, not just in weight, though it cuts into your skin with every step, rubbing raw the soft places behind your ankles. The heaviness is in what it means. You've stopped being a person. You've become cargo that can walk. That's the only reason you're still alive. Because your legs still move. Because your back can still carry the weight of your own destruction. You're in a coffle now, the long human serpent of the condemned, bound by iron, silence, and the knowledge that no one is coming to save you. The jungle swallows the sun in thick green shadows. Every breath is a fight against heat and humidity, your lungs heavy with air that smells like rotting leaves and distant smoke. Your feet slap the earth, barefoot, blistered, bleeding. The soil shifts from soft loam to sharp gravel to cracked red clay. You feel every pebble, every thorn, every insult that the road has to offer. You can't stop. If you fall, the chain pulls you. If you scream, no one listens. The line keeps moving. Always forward, always away. Your clothes are gone, just a strip of cloth now, stiff with dust and dried sweat. The rest of you is exposed to the sun, the insects, and the leering eyes of the men who guard the march with spears and whips. Some laugh as you stumble. Others walk silently, their eyes cold and bored, as if they've seen this parade of misery too many times to care. To them, you're not new. You're not even you. You're just the next link in the chain. The people around you are strangers, but you learn their stories in footsteps. You see the young man whose mouth has become a trembling line because crying takes too much energy. The woman with a swollen belly, still trying to shield it with her shackled hands. The elder who whispers prayers in a language no one answers anymore. You are all ghosts of what you were. The march makes you forget your name faster than the whip. It drains identity one step at a time. The guards say nothing about where you're going. When they do speak, it's in commands, foreign words snapped like cracked leather. You learn quickly what each tone means. Walk, stop, eat, kneel, silence. Water is a trick of power. They'll pass it out in small gourds, only when the sun is high, and only if they feel like it. You learn to drink fast, because hesitation means nothing, means you get nothing. At night, you collapse into the dust, bodies folding like broken tools. There's no shelter, no blanket, just the warmth of your own skin and the feverish shivers of those who are already slipping away. Some don't get up in the morning. If they're lucky, The guards cut them loose and leave them for the vultures. If they're not, the rest of the line has to drag their body until it's too stiff to move. You stop thinking of death as an end. It's a relief you're not allowed to choose. Sometimes the march takes you through villages. Not your village, never your village, but ones with curious eyes peering through doors and children who stare in silence. You wonder what they see. Do they see themselves in you? Or do they just see another chain passing through, like a storm they've learned to ignore? You lose track of time. Days bleed into one another. Your world shrinks to dust, footsteps, and the sound of metal against bone. You think of your mother's hands, of the song your sister used to hum when she twisted your hair, of the carved bowl your father made for your birthday. Then you think of nothing. Memory becomes a luxury. Survival demands silence. You notice things differently now. How the chain heats up under the sun. How the sound of distant drums makes your heart race. How some trees smell like hope and others like rot. You notice the rhythm of suffering, the grim ballet of how to walk just enough to not fall, to breathe just enough to not faint, to hope just enough to not break. But hope becomes a razor. It cuts deeper the longer you hold it. So, eventually, most of you let it go. And still, the march continues. Through rivers that bite your skin with parasites. Through deserts that stretch like an accusation. Through forests so thick they feel like they're trying to pull you in. Roots reaching for your ankles like they're trying to bury you early. You keep walking. Because the chain does. You hear the sea before you see it. A deep, endless groan that rises and falls like the breath of something ancient and patient and hungry. Salt clings to the air, sharp and strange, mixing with the sour scent of sweat and something older, something that makes your stomach twist before your mind can name it. The march is over, but not really. The line has slowed, not stopped. The chain still binds your ankles. Your mouth is dry, your skin coated in dust, and your thoughts are so far away they might as well belong to someone else. But the sound of waves grows louder, and when the trees finally open, there it is, the ocean, and squatting beside it like a stone beast, the castle. It rises from the earth in slabs of white and gray, its walls thick and pitted, stained by rain and time and things that don't wash away. Cannons jut out over the sea. Flags ripple in the wind, painted with colors you don't recognize. At first glance, it almost looks like a place of power, of grandeur, a palace maybe, something for kings. But the closer you get, the more the illusion peels away. The walls are too high, the doors too small, the smell too foul. You realize it's not built to protect people, it's built to trap them. The guards shove you through an archway, and suddenly the sun disappears. The courtyard is dark and slick with old moss, the ground worn smooth from too many bare feet. Soldiers stand everywhere, some in bright uniforms, others in ragged shirts with weapons slung lazily over their shoulders. You don't understand their words, but you understand the tone. Mocking, practiced, bored, like people who've done this before. Like this isn't a day of terror for them, it's just Tuesday. They separate the men from the women. No warning, no explanation, just a sudden barked order and chaos. Children scream. Hands reach for one another. A woman drops to her knees, clutching her son so tightly it takes 3 guards to pry them apart. He's dragged away, mouth open, in a soundless cry. She doesn't fight after that. She just collapses where she knelt, face pressed to the stone floor, shaking like a leaf in a storm. You're shoved down a stairwell, into darkness. The air changes. It's no longer hot. It's thick, damp, wet in a way that doesn't feel like water, but like breath. Like too many lungs exhaled here, and the air hasn't cleared since. The room you enter has no windows, no beds, no place to lie down. Just stone walls slick with condensation, and a floor carved with grooves that you'll soon learn are for urine and blood to run through. There are iron rings in the walls. The smell is overwhelming. Sweat, feces, vomit, rot. But beneath all of that, something worse. A human stench. Deep and permanent. The kind that only comes from fear that's had time to soak into stone. This is where they keep you. Not for a night. For weeks, maybe months, until the ship is ready. The cell fills quickly, bodies packed shoulder to shoulder, backs pressed against strangers. There's no space to stretch, no room to sit comfortably, no privacy. You relieve yourself where you stand. You eat. If you eat, standing in the same filth. You sleep with your eyes open and your arms curled tight around your ribs, trying not to cry out when the rats chew on your toes or when someone next to you stops breathing and no one has the strength to move them. Above you, the castle's top floor is bright and airy. That's where the Europeans live. They dine on porridge and boiled meat, sipping wine and writing letters home about business and weather and God. Some even bring their wives. They pray before dinner. They bless the food. They walk the same halls that drip down into the hell below, and they never hear a sound. You learn not to speak. Words are dangerous now. You communicate in looks, in nods, in the subtle way someone shifts their weight to shield someone weaker. You hear stories from those who've been here longer, about men who were beaten to death for coughing too loudly, about women taken upstairs at night and returned with eyes that never quite focus again. You start to count the days by the light that slips under the door and then forget how high you got. Time stops meaning anything. Only pain passes consistently. This isn't a holding cell. It's a breaking room, a place to take what's left of your will and grind it into dust, so when they finally lead you to the ship, you won't scream anymore. You'll just obey. The cell is more tomb than room. It breathes in heat and exhales sickness. The walls sweat. So do the bodies pressed against you, bodies that no longer smell like people but like something between meat and memory. There's no light, except for a slim crack near the top, just enough to tease you with the idea that the sun still exists. The air is thick enough to chew, flavored with urine, vomit, mildew, and something else, something ancient and awful, like despair that's had time to settle and curdle. You stopped asking for water days ago. Your throat is too dry to shape the words. Your lips are cracked. Your tongue lies heavy in your mouth like a thing already dead. Someone moans in the corner, softly, rhythmically, like a child trying to rock away the world. You think it's a prayer, but the words are warped, half-sung, half-breathed. No one joins in. The gods that followed you here have gone silent, or maybe they stayed behind, back in the trees and soil where they belonged. Maybe they knew better than to follow you into this place. You don't know how long you've been here. Time moves differently now, less like a river and more like a rope, slowly tightening around your neck. Sleep doesn't come. Hunger has dulled into a constant hum. Pain has become a language of its own, and you've learned how to read the difference between someone shivering from fever and someone shivering from fear. You've also learned how quiet a body can go when life slips out of it. When the door opens, it's not with ceremony, no warning, just a sudden scraping of wood and a rush of sunlight that feels violent. You flinch, not because of the light itself, but because of what always comes after: footsteps, commands, the jab of a stick, and then the shouting begins. You're grabbed before you can stand on your own, dragged forward by someone who doesn't look at you, because to look is to see, and to see is dangerous in a place like this. They march you through a tunnel, carved from stone and thick with shadows. The air shifts as you go, from stagnant to briny, as if even the breeze is changing languages. You try not to stumble, but your legs are unsure, hollow things. You try not to look behind you, but you hear the others, chains clinking like cruel wind chimes, bare feet slapping against whetstone. The tunnel narrows. The light ahead grows, and then suddenly, you're there. The door. It isn't grand. It isn't carved with warnings or prayers or names. It's just a frame of wood and stone that opens onto the sea. But the wind that blows through it feels final. The ocean stretches out like an endless mouth. And beyond it, nothing. Not your village, not your language, not even the faintest echo of home. Just water and waiting. You hesitate. For a second, your body won't move. Not because you think you can run. Those days are gone. But because some part of you still believes this is a nightmare. That doors lead to freedom. That the sea is sacred. That ships carry goods, not souls. But then the whip cracks behind you, and your feet obey, even if your mind refuses. You're herded down a ramp slick with seawater and filth. The smell hits next, worse than the cell, if that's possible. The ship rocks gently in the harbor, its belly open like it's ready to swallow you whole. Men with sticks bark orders in languages you don't understand, but the tone is universal. Move, obey, disappear. You glance up once and see the deck above. Fresh air, open sky, a different world. A man in a hat is drinking from a silver cup, watching the line of chained bodies with a bored expression, like he's waiting for a shipment of barrels. You wonder what he sees. You wonder if he sees anything at all. At the base of the ramp, someone cries out. A woman refuses to move, collapses to the planks, arms wrapped around herself like armor. A guard lifts a club. No words, no hesitation. The sound it makes is wet and final. The line moves again. She's left behind, whether she's breathing or not. When you step onto the ship, it feels like stepping off the edge of the earth. The boards creak under your weight. The wind pulls at your skin. And the door behind you, the one that opened without welcome, closes. You don't hear it slam, but you feel it. Because that wasn't just a door. That was the last exit from the world you knew. You smell the ship before you see it, long before. The wind carries it, low and heavy, a stench that crawls up your nostrils and settles in the back of your throat. It's not just the sea, not just the tar and the wood and the rotting ropes. It's older, thicker. It smells like waste, like something alive died screaming and was never taken away. It smells like despair made physical. And then it appears, looming out of the mist like a wound in the water. Massive, wrong. A monster made of timber and rust and iron will. It doesn't float so much as crouch on the sea, waiting to swallow. The ship is dark, painted in shadows and hardened salt. Its belly yawns open, a slatted ramp slick with seawater and whatever else the last group left behind. The sailors shout from above, dangling ropes and shouting orders. You don't understand the words, but you understand what they want. Move, now, up the ramp, into the mouth. You try to look past it, to the sky, the waves, the faraway sun, but even the sea feels foreign now. Its beauty doesn't comfort. It just reminds you how far from land you are, and how much farther you're about to go. The guards jab you forward with sticks, the metal collars biting into your neck as you stumble up the ramp. Each step creaks, and your bare feet slip on the wood slick with filth. Someone ahead of you falls. The line stops. A sailor curses, swings a length of rope down like a whip. The scream is quick, high-pitched, and gone. The line moves again. You reach the top and are swallowed whole. Inside, it is worse than you imagined. The air doesn't move. It huddles thick in your lungs like wet wool. There's barely any light, just flickers of sun through narrow slats in the hull, cutting stripes across faces already hollowed out by hunger and fear. The floor is damp, always damp, not with water but with the slow rot of unwashed skin, urine, bile, and something else, something sour and metallic that you don't name. Blood, probably. Maybe vomit. Maybe both. The walls are slick with condensation, the ceiling low enough that some have to crouch just to breathe. They pack you in tight. Bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder, thigh to thigh, chained at the wrists and ankles. You're placed between two strangers who don't look at you. You don't look at them. Eye contact feels too human for a place like this. You lie down because there's nowhere to sit, and the wood beneath you is uneven, splintered, bruising every bone. The iron around your limbs is cold at first. Then it gets warm from your skin, and then hot from the others pressed against you. There's no privacy, no dignity. If you need to relieve yourself, you do it where you lie. The waist slides with the roll of the ship, mixing with seawater that leaks through the cracks. Your body becomes sticky with it. So does your neighbor. You stop flinching when someone vomits nearby. You stop flinching when someone dies. The only thing worse than the screams are the silences that come after. Above deck, you hear footsteps, laughter, buckets being filled. The sailors go about their work as if nothing is happening below, as if the cargo chained in the belly of their ship isn't breathing, weeping, bleeding. Sometimes one of them comes down to check the numbers, to strike someone, to drag someone away. You don't ask where they go. You know enough not to ask. The ship rocks endlessly, like a cradle built by a sadist. The motion never stops. It lulls you into a kind of madness where your mind floats above your body because it can't stand to stay inside it. You lose track of time. Days bleed into each other. Hunger becomes a background noise. Thirst becomes a scream. Your lips crack. Your tongue thickens. Your skin itches in places you can't reach, swarmed by lice and whatever else calls this place home. Some begin to mutter. Some pray. Some just stare blankly at the wood, 6 inches from their face. You start to understand how people go mad. You start to welcome the idea. Because madness, at least, might offer escape. This isn't a ship. It's a machine. It has one purpose: to move bodies from the world they knew to the world that wants to own them. It doesn't care who survives. It only cares who arrives. It eats people, and you're already inside. The darkness below deck isn't just the absence of light. It's a presence. Thick, choking, alive, in a way that feels cruel. It presses down from the beams and curls up from the floorboards. You breathe it in with every gasp, and it sits in your throat like damp wool. There's no sky here, no moon, no stars. Just shadows that move when someone shifts, groans that drift from mouths you can't see, and the endless groaning of the ship as it sways, each creak a reminder that you're not standing on Earth anymore. You're packed shoulder to shoulder, thigh to thigh, spine to splintered spine. The walls sweat, the people sweat. There's no airflow, no breeze, no mercy. The heat builds with every hour, rising off bodies like steam from boiling meat. Skin sticks to skin. You shift to escape it, but there's nowhere to go. Your ankle shackles clink when you try, the iron biting into your flesh, chafed and raw from days of friction and salt. You try to stretch, but there's no space. You try to sit upright, but your head slams against the wooden beam above you, so you fold yourself into whatever shape you can find and try not to scream. The floor is slick, not with water. There's barely enough of that to drink, let alone spill, but with the combined runoff of filth and suffering, feces, urine, blood, vomit, spit. All of it seeps into the boards, and when the ship rocks too sharply, it slides from one side to the other like a tide of human waste. You are part of it now. Your body is wet and cold and sticky. You gave up on cleanliness days ago. Now you just pray you don't slip when you shift, that you don't land face first in someone else's sickness. The air tastes wrong. You can feel it on your tongue, sour and metallic. Every breath is an effort, every inhale a negotiation. Some start coughing, and they don't stop. Some wheeze all night, lungs filled with dampness and dread. Others fall silent altogether, their breath shallow, their chests barely rising. You stop asking if they're asleep. The answers are rarely good. You lose track of the day, of the week, of time itself. Light only filters in when the hatch is cracked open, usually to throw down bowls of food or buckets of water, never enough for everyone, always fast and brutal. Fights break out. People claw and scream and beg. Sometimes a body is pulled up and thrown out, the splash swallowed by the sea without a ripple. You don't know their names. You stop trying to learn names. Names belong to people. You are cargo now. You feel it in the way the crew speaks to you, or doesn't. You are counted, not greeted, prodded, not spoken to. They don't look you in the eye. To them, you're not a person. You're a number, a weight, a line on a ledger that needs to stay alive just long enough to sell. Anything more is inconvenient. Anything less is a loss. Some try to talk. They whisper at night, voices cracking from thirst. They tell stories, not to entertain, but to remember who they were. A mother talks about her daughter. A boy sings a song his father used to play on the drum. The words are soft, half lost in the sway of the ship, but they cut through the dark like candlelight. Brief, flickering, gone. Others go quiet and never return. Their eyes glass over. They don't cry. They don't sleep. They just stare forward into the dark until something inside them unravels. You wonder if they're still alive. You wonder if you are. Sometimes, you hear the rats. They scurry across the beams above, fat from feasting. They aren't afraid of you. You are no threat. You can't move. You can't fight. You can't stop them from crawling over your legs or chewing at the feet of those who can't feel the pain anymore. You just lie there, still, chained, below everything. You were born under a sun. You grew up knowing the smell of rain and the sound of birds. You danced. You laughed. You ate from your mother's hands. Now, you are stripped of sky, of name, of sound. You are not in the ship. You are beneath it. Beneath language, beneath dignity, beneath memory. Below decks, below humanity. The ship never stops moving. It rocks, it sways, it tilts with a rhythm that doesn't lull. It grinds. It's the kind of motion that wrings the stomach, that pulls bile from the gut, and makes the brain feel like it's been unspooled. The boards above groan and shift with every wave, each creak like a warning that the whole thing could snap in two at any moment. But it doesn't. It holds. Because the ship is built to last, even if you are not. The ocean crashes against the hull with fury, but it's not the loudest thing you hear. That title belongs to the people packed around you. Bodies in every direction, chained and curled, pressed into each other like grain in a sack. The air is thick with sound, not the kind that fades, but the kind that lingers in the gut. Moaning, endless and low, like the sound of a prayer that forgot its words. Sobs that shake the ribs. Cries that come in sudden bursts, sharp and panicked, the last pieces of someone trying to hold on to themselves. They start high and end with nothing, like a match blown out mid-flame. Some try to whisper to whatever gods are still listening. You hear fragments of different languages, pleas, chants, songs, turned into broken murmurs. Some try to sing, just to feel human again, but the songs die quickly, swallowed by the damp. The sound bounces off the wooden walls, multiplying into a symphony of despair. There is no silence here, only the brief, heavy moments when someone's voice disappears, and everyone wonders whether it's from sleep, madness, or death. Retching comes often. The motion of the ship makes it impossible to keep food down. When they throw mush into the hold, it splatters across faces and legs. The lucky ones manage to eat. The unlucky spit it back up minutes later, their stomachs heaving until there's nothing left. The sound of vomiting becomes normal, just another part of the chorus. You stop flinching when it happens next to you. You wipe it off your chest without thinking. Sometimes someone starts screaming. No one knows why. Maybe they've lost someone beside them. Maybe the pain in their legs has become too much. Maybe the air has finally choked the last of their sanity. The screaming is wild, wordless, more animal than human. And then, almost always, it ends abruptly. A guard opens the hatch. A club comes down. Or the scream just fades, like a flame starved of air. Either way, it's quiet again. For a moment, until someone else breaks. Babies don't cry for long. At first, their wails pierce through the dark, high and shrill, cutting above even the groans. But then they go quiet. Not because they're comforted, because they're fading. Mothers try to nurse, try to soothe, try to keep the small flickers of life alive with lullabies whispered in their native tongue. But there's no milk, no strength, and no room for mourning. Sometimes, the sounds stop altogether in one corner. That's when someone's died. Their body goes still, cold. You can hear the breath leave them, like a soft gasp into the dark. And then, nothing. Just stillness. The people around them shift, not in grief, but in silence. Too tired to weep, too afraid to speak. They don't call for help. There is none. Even in the dark, you can feel the fear when the quiet comes. Because silence here isn't peace. It's surrender. The sound of suffering is everywhere, all at once. It clings to your skin, nestles into your ears, soaks into your dreams. You carry it in your body, in the way your shoulders tense, even in sleep, in the way your teeth grind against each other without you realizing. It becomes the backdrop to everything, louder than the creaking ship, louder than the crashing waves, louder than your own thoughts. You try to remember what silence used to sound like. The hush of morning mist, the pause after laughter, the moment of stillness before prayer. But you can't. Now, silence means death, and everything else is pain. They don't feed you to keep you strong. They feed you so your chest keeps rising, so you don't die too fast, so the traders don't lose money. Your health isn't a goal, it's a calculation, a wager between starvation and resale value. What they feed you isn't meant to nourish, it's meant to delay the collapse. Twice a day, if they remember, they open the hatch and throw something down. Not a meal, a portion, a ritual of insult wrapped in the bare minimum. Some days, it's a bowl of beans so old they squirm with life. Maggots twitching through the mush, pale and slow, undisturbed. No one flinches anymore. Hunger does that. It scrapes away disgust until your mouth opens on instinct, until you stop noticing the taste, the texture, the crawling. Other days, it's rice, barely warm, damp with whatever water the sailors used to boil it, if they bothered boiling it at all. You eat with your hands, or with your mouth, directly from the bowl, if your wrists are still chained. No utensils, no choices. You scoop what you can before the bowl is yanked away or spilled. The weak eat last. The sick don't eat at all. The water they give you is brown, brackish, warm from sitting in barrels too long in the sun. It tastes like metal or rot or both. Sometimes it smells like rope soaked in seawater. You drink it anyway. You drink the ocean itself if it would stop the clawing in your throat. You learn to ration sips, to hold the swallow in your mouth for just a second longer, like that might convince your body it got more than it did. And still, your stomach stays empty. Your bones sharpen. Your skin dulls. Hunger becomes more than pain. It becomes the shape of your life. You feel it in your spine when you stretch, in your gut when the ship rocks, in your dreams when your mind tries to remember flavors that no longer feel real. You think of yams, of roasted fish, of okra stew. You think of your mother's cooking pot, always warm, always waiting. But here, food isn't warmth, it's a countdown. People begin to change under the weight of hunger. Their eyes sink, their ribs poke through like scaffolding, bellies bloat, not from fullness, but from emptiness gone too far. Teeth loosen. Wounds stop healing. Skin takes on a waxy hue. You learn the stages. You recognize when someone is tipping over the edge, when their chewing slows, when their eyes glaze even as their mouth moves. They don't stop eating. They just stop fighting for it. And then, they stop altogether. You watch it happen more than once. A girl refuses the bowl, just turns her head and closes her lips. Someone nudges her, tries to coax her, but she doesn't move. The next morning, she's cold. Not from the air. It's never cold here, but from the kind of stillness you don't come back from. The guards don't notice. Or maybe they do, and don't care. She's tossed over the side by midday. That's the logic. Keep them alive, but just barely. You can't sell dead flesh, but you don't need to sell strong minds. Just functioning bodies. So they give you enough to prevent collapse. Enough to keep you breathing. Enough to keep you marching if your chains are ever unlocked. But not enough to think. Not enough to remember who you were before this ship. Not enough to resist. Just enough to survive one more day of suffering. You stop looking forward to the feeding. It becomes routine like everything else. You eat because you must. Not because it tastes good. Not because it gives you strength. You eat because your body demands it, even when your soul has gone quiet. Some pray over the bowl, whispering to gods through cracked lips. Others curse it, hurling insults at the heavens with mouths too dry to spit. Most say nothing. Most just chew and swallow, and chew and swallow, and then curl back into the dark and wait for the next insult disguised as sustenance. Because here, food isn't a gift. It's a leash. The heat doesn't just sit on your skin. It wraps around your body like a second layer, heavy and wet. It crawls into your mouth, fills your lungs, presses into your chest with every shallow breath. The wood beneath you is soaked, but not with water. It's a stew of filth, sweat, blood, bile, feces, all warmed by dozens of bodies packed so tightly that the air barely moves. Below deck, there's no sky, no wind, no relief. The hatch above stays closed for hours, sometimes days, and without fresh air, the space becomes a furnace. By midday, the heat can rise to over 100 degrees, and that's on a good day. It's not the heat you'd feel in a field or under the sun. It's trapped heat, stagnant and swollen, as if the air has nowhere left to go but into your mouth and back out as steam. You sweat until there's nothing left to sweat. Then your body turns clammy, then dry, then cold. Even though the heat still burns around you, your skin starts to shiver. That's when you know the fever is coming. That's when you start to worry. The smell is alive. It's not one thing, not one stink. It's layers. First, the sour reek of vomit, sharp and immediate. Then the acrid sting of urine, soaked into every corner, every cloth, every plank. Beneath that, the thick rot of feces, smearing between legs, packed into cracks in the wood, dried into flakes that lift into the air when the ship rocks. But worse than all of it is the stench of fear. The way bodies smell when they're breaking from the inside. The way breath changes when someone knows they won't survive. That odor sinks into your skin. You carry it with you. You breathe it even when you try not to. You don't get used to it. Not really. You learn to stop gagging. You learn how to breathe through your mouth, then wish you hadn't. You try to hold your breath, but it's too hot for that. The air feels thick, sticky, like trying to inhale water. Each breath tastes like rust. Your lungs start to ache. The rhythm of your breathing becomes shallow, clipped. You stop sighing. You stop yawning. Even sleeping becomes a struggle, because sleep demands surrender, and your body doesn't trust the air enough to let go. Some people wheeze constantly. You can hear them in the dark, gasping like fish flung onto dry land. Their coughs start deep, rattling through their ribs. At first, it's just one or two. Then it's a chorus. The sound blends into the groans, the creaks of the ship, the slap of water outside the hull. But these coughs are different. They never stop. And when they do, it means the body's stopped trying. You learn to listen for that change. You learn to brace yourself. They say the ship is moving forward, that the land is getting closer. But down here, time melts. There are no days, no nights, just cycles of stifling heat and fits of choking. You don't know if you've been here for 3 days or 30. You try to mark time by the dead. How many were dragged away? How many still lie curled and quiet, too weak to scream? It's not exact, but it's something. The guards don't come below unless they have to. They don't like the air either. They cover their faces when they descend, tie rags around their mouths like the stink might bite, but it's not the smell they fear. It's what the smell means. It means the rot is winning. That sickness is blooming in the dark. That what was once cargo is becoming corpses. So they come down swinging, shouting, beating, dragging bodies to the surface to be tossed into the sea before they infect the rest. Not out of mercy, out of math. Fewer bodies means more air. You breathe because you have no choice. But every breath feels like swallowing poison. You can feel it changing you. Your voice gets hoarse. Your chest burns. Your thoughts dull. You start to forget what clean air felt like, what wind was, what a full breath could do. Down here, the air doesn't keep you alive. It's what kills you slowly. It starts with a cough, not yours, someone else's. A raspy, wet sound from somewhere in the dark, followed by a groan, then a retching that seems to rip the voice from their throat. You flinch, not because it's new, but because it's not. It's the 3rd time today, or the 5th, maybe more. You stopped counting. You stopped wanting to. At first, you tried to inch away from the sick. You shifted your weight when someone next to you began to shiver, when their breath came in short, stuttering gasps. But there's nowhere to move. You're shoulder to shoulder, ankle to ankle. Their sweat is your sweat. Their fever, your breath. When they throw up, it lands on your legs. When they die, their weight slumps against you until someone removes the body, or doesn't. The sickness moves fast. It doesn't ask. It doesn't warn. One day, the person beside you is whispering about home, muttering prayers to gods you've never heard of. The next, they're silent. Their skin turns grayish, eyes sunken, their lips crust with dried spittle. Their stomach swells. Their limbs go stiff. They stop crying out. They stop moving. Then they're gone. And the rot begins. Dysentery blooms first. It crawls through the lower decks like mold on bread. You smell it before you see it. Acidic, sour, everywhere. It comes from the bodies that can't control themselves anymore, from the puddles that gather under backsides, from the way it soaks into the wood and never leaves. You sit in it. You breathe it. You become part of it. It seeps into your skin, into your thoughts. The first time you gag. The second, you flinch. After that, you just endure. You have to. Then comes the fever. It cooks people from the inside out. You watch men sweat through their skin until they're slick like fish. Women shake so hard their chains rattle like drums. Some burn hot and then go cold, ice creeping into their fingers even as the ship swelters. The fever doesn't care about age or strength. It steals the young as easily as the old. You hear them talk to ghosts. You see their eyes roll back. Then they stop breathing, and the ship rocks on without them. The sores are the worst. Smallpox, they whisper. It starts with a rash, tiny bumps along the arms and back, then the skin splits, then pus, then scabs, black and crusted, peeling off with every movement. You try not to look, but you feel it. When someone next to you scratches until their skin comes away in strips. When their wounds brush against yours. When the blood they cough out lands on your chest. You pray you don't catch it. But you will. Everyone does. The sickness doesn't skip. It circles. Some say the rats bring it. Fat, slick things with red eyes and bold steps. They move without fear, crawling over sleeping bodies, chewing through the flesh of those too weak to fight back. You wake to the sound of teeth. You watch them feast. The rats don't wait for death. And then there's the scurvy. It creeps in silently, like guilt. First your gums bleed, then your teeth loosen, your joints swell, your legs cramp so hard you can't bend them. You start to smell different, like something rusting, something spoiled. The sailors above deck don't get it as badly. They have fruit. You don't. Just moldy rice and cloudy water and prayers that no longer stick to the ceiling. The crew doesn't treat the sick. They monitor. They decide. If you're too weak to stand, too slow to eat, too sick to scream, you're marked. They open the hatch, drag you up by your arms, and throw you over the side. The splash is soft. The sea, hungrier than all of us, doesn't waste time. You try to stay healthy, but health doesn't live here. It died in the jungle. It collapsed on the march. It vanished when the air turned sour and the light disappeared. You count your breath, your heartbeats, your rations, but you know the truth. You're not wondering if you'll get sick. Only when. You used to have a name. It was spoken with love, shouted in play, whispered in prayer. It echoed through the trees when your mother called you home, wrapped itself around the stories your father told at dusk, danced in the mouths of your siblings when they teased you. That name was soft some days and sharp on others, but it was yours. It carried your village, your family, your gods. It knew who you were. Now, no one says it. The last time you heard it was somewhere between the dust of the march and the stone of the fortress. Someone shouted it as they were torn from your grasp. You tried to answer. You tried to say it back, but the iron was already in your mouth, and the noise of chains drowned everything else. Since then, the name has slipped from the air, from the ears, from the world. It doesn't belong here. Names don't survive in the hold. The crew doesn't ask who you are. They don't care. When they speak to you, if they speak to you, it's with grunts, whistles, commands, barked in a language meant to dominate, not to understand. Sometimes they point. Sometimes they kick. Sometimes they tug your arm or strike your back or shove a bowl in your hands without looking at your face. You are not a person to them. You are mass. You are weight. You are countable, movable, disposable. If they need to distinguish you from another, they use numbers. Not written, not carved, just muttered. Sometimes they don't even bother. A finger jabs in your direction. A hand grabs your wrist. You are pulled from one place to another without explanation, and you stop wondering why. You stop asking. Language itself becomes foreign, then pointless. You forget what your own voice sounds like. You forget how to form the syllables of the name that once opened doors and brought smiles. You start to notice how quickly people vanish. The sick, the defiant, the broken. They are there, 1 hour, gone the next. No one calls out for them by name. No one mourns aloud. Not because they don't care, but because grief here is quiet, tucked beneath the ribs, where the guards can't reach it. You keep your sadness in silence. You learn to grieve in glances, in the way someone closes their eyes a little longer than usual, in the way a hand grips another just once before letting go. There are faces here you've come to recognize. A boy with a scar above his eye, a woman who hums when the ship rocks, an elder whose voice is thick with memory. You see them every day, and yet you do not know what to call them. They don't know your name either. That part of you is gone. Not stolen in one blow, but worn away like bark stripped by wind. Every hour you go unnamed is an hour closer to not being anyone at all. Even your own memory starts to betray you. You try to hold on to the shape of the word, the feel of it in your mouth, but it blurs. It loses weight. You start to doubt the tone. Was it short or long? Was it shouted or sung? You mouth it to yourself in the dark, but it feels like a lie, like something imagined. Your name begins to sound like someone else's story. And when they take you above deck, when they chain you in pairs and scrub your skin to make you more presentable, when they prod your teeth like a butcher checks fat on meat, they never ask you who you are. Only what you are, how much you weigh, how many steps you can walk before collapsing, how well you might sell. You stand there naked under the sun, exposed and measured, and not once do they call you anything but cargo. You were once a child with a name. You were once a brother, a daughter, a mother, a friend. You were once the center of someone's world. Now, you are a silence. A number. If they bother to count you at all, they don't look you in the eyes. Not really. Their eyes slide over you like your furniture, like your damp rope or spoiled bread. You've been beneath the deck long enough to know the difference between being seen and being scanned. When the sailors come down, boots thudding on wood, breath sour with rum, they don't pause to ask names or check for signs of pain. They check your bones, your teeth, your weight. They're not looking for you. They're looking for loss, for damage, for profit slipping through the cracks. They are not all monsters, but none are saints. Some are barely men, boys really, sent out to sea before their faces could grow beards. They laugh loud and fast, jokes shouted in thick, slurred tongues that you can't understand but feel in your bones. They swing their buckets and ropes with a practiced recklessness, stepping over chained legs like they're stepping over firewood. Sometimes, they wince at the smell below deck, tie rags around their noses, curse the heat, curse the noise, curse the moaning bodies, but they don't leave. They just dump the food, slam the hatch, and go back up to their world of sun and wind and sky. Others don't flinch. The veterans. The ones with skin like cured leather and eyes like chipped stone. They've done this voyage before. Some, dozens of times. They don't speak to you. They don't even raise their voices. They've perfected the art of cruelty without anger. Their strikes come quick, without passion, without hesitation. A correction, not a punishment. A reminder that you are not people to them. You are weight to be managed. When they do speak, it's in short bursts, commands, grunts, shouted numbers. Their voices bounce off the beams and echo in the dark, like the barking of dogs. You don't know what they're saying, but you understand what they mean. Move. Eat. Stop. Lie down. Be silent. Their words aren't language. They're leash. Drunkenness fills the gaps. At night, when the air is cooler and the moon slices across the water, they drink, they sing, they stagger across the deck, swaying with the ship. Some come below, not for work, but for something else. You learn quickly who to avoid. The ones whose voices turn high when they're drunk. The ones who smile before they hurt you. The ones who drag someone out of the hold and return alone, whistling, wiping their hands. There are moments, brief and strange, when a crewman hesitates, when his hand lingers too long on a shoulder, when he watches someone struggle to eat and almost looks sorry. You want to believe something human lives behind his eyes, but then he steps back. He remembers his orders. He remembers what cargo means, and the door slams shut again. They are scared too, some of them. Not of you, of the ship, of the sea, of sickness. You see it in the way they look at their own hands, checking for sores, in the way they keep distance from each other when a crewmate starts to cough. The fear isn't for what's happening below. It's for what might creep up from it. You are a threat only because your body might die before it's sold. They follow rules, or the pieces of rules they're told matter. Whips for disobedience, shackles for the defiant. No talking, no resting, no mercy. They carry out these tasks not with rage, but with routine. like sweeping the floor, like trimming a sail, like tossing trash overboard. Because to them, that's all this is. You are not someone's child. You are not someone's mother. You are not someone's memory or dream or prayer. You are weight. You are number. You are freight. And the crew is here to deliver you, not to care. The first time you see it, you think it must be a punishment. Someone did something, tried to escape, refused to eat, spoke too loudly. Something. There has to be a reason, because otherwise nothing makes sense. Otherwise pain is just a language the ship speaks fluently, and no one is safe from its grammar. A man is hauled up from below deck, his wrists bound, his back bare. The crew doesn't shout. There's no ceremony, no warning, just movement. Practiced, efficient, clean. He's tied to the mast. His knees shake. His lips move in prayer, or maybe a goodbye. The sailor holding the whip is grinning, not with hate, with boredom. Like he's done this so many times it no longer stirs anything in him. He lifts his arm. The first crack splits the air like thunder. The second draws blood. By the third, the man screams. And no one moves to help him. The others, those who have been on the ship longer, don't even flinch. They sit still, eyes low, bodies tense but resigned. You try to look away, but the sound keeps pulling you back. The whip doesn't stop. The flesh tears. The rope bites deeper. And when the man's voice goes hoarse, when he slumps forward with nothing left to give, they keep going. Not to punish, not to teach, just because they can. He's not the last. Each day someone is dragged up. Sometimes two, sometimes more. It doesn't matter what they did, or if they did anything at all. The whippings aren't responses. They're reminders. This is what happens to bodies here. This is what control looks like. The crew doesn't need rebellion to justify violence. They need rhythm, routine, something to break the silence between meals and sickness and death. You learn to measure time by it. The sound of the lash becomes the ship's heartbeat. It echoes through the hold like a sermon, one you can't avoid, one you can't forget. You hear it in your sleep. You wake with it in your ears. You start to anticipate it, even when there's no reason to. A step overhead, a shout, a sudden creak. Your muscles brace before the whip ever cracks. Sometimes the victims cry out, beg, curse. Sometimes they go silent, lips clenched, trying not to give the crew what they want. It doesn't matter. Pain is still pain. Blood still flows. The wood still drinks it. And the ship keeps moving. There is no protection, no mercy. You've seen children struck. Women, the elderly. No one is spared. The crew doesn't care how old you are or how fragile. They want to see your skin break. They want to hear the sound of pain, not because they enjoy it, but because it confirms something, that you are beneath them, that you remember who owns your body. You begin to understand the rules, even if no one says them aloud. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't move unless ordered. Don't make eye contact. Don't cry too loudly. Don't stand out. Be invisible. Be silent. Be small. But even that doesn't guarantee safety. The whip finds you when it wants to. And then, one day, it's your turn. They grab you without warning. Your body resists, but weakly. Hunger has stripped your strength. Fear has carved out your courage. You're dragged above deck, shoved against the mast, and tied so tight the ropes feel like fire. You try to breathe. You try to remember your name. You try to find something to hold on to. Some memory that might anchor you. The first strike takes your breath away. The second tears your skin. By the third, you can't feel where your back ends and the air begins. The pain floods every part of you. It's not sharp. It's total. The world narrows to that single, impossible point where flesh meets leather and something inside you begins to crack. Your cries don't matter. They're not heard. They're expected. They take the women to another part of the ship, not because it's safer, not because it's cleaner, not because the crew has any interest in dignity. It's simply easier that way. Easier to find them when they want them, easier to hurt them in the ways only women are hurt. The rest of the hold breathes a different kind of silence when the hatch opens and the sailors call for them. You see the fear ripple before the footsteps come. You feel the air change. There's no mistaking why they're separated. At first, they resist. Of course they do. A girl bites one of the crew so hard his hand bleeds. A mother clutches her child and refuses to let go when they try to pull her away. The lash silences both. Not forever, but long enough. You learn quickly that refusal is not part of the bargain on this ship. The price of resistance is always higher than you think it will be. They stop fighting eventually. Not because they agree, because they are tired of screaming. What happens in that part of the ship doesn't stay hidden for long. You hear it. Everyone does. The cries, the slaps, the muffled sounds that don't need translation. Some try to shut it out. Others press their faces to the boards and weep. You'd think the suffering would fade into background noise after a while, but it doesn't. It cuts fresh each time. Because it isn't just pain. It's the sound of something being stolen again and again without apology. Young girls disappear first. The ones with small frames and wide eyes. Sometimes they return with torn clothes and bloodied thighs. Sometimes they don't return at all. The women who survive speak less and less. They sit with their knees pulled to their chests, eyes vacant, arms wrapped around themselves like armor. You watch them rock slowly, not to soothe themselves, but to stay inside their own bodies, to not vanish. Pregnancy is not a miracle here. It is not welcomed with joy. It is a sentence. Some women come aboard already carrying. Others are made to carry after days or weeks of forced visits from the crew. When bellies swell, the crew takes notes. The women are worth more, they say, if they give birth. 2 for the price of 1. Flesh that breeds. Investment. Miscarriage comes often. The malnutrition, the beatings, the filth. None of it makes room for life. You see the aftermath in the eyes of the mothers. The way they stare into nothing, rocking emptiness in their arms. No ceremony, no mourning, just silence and blood soaked into the boards. The babies who survive don't survive for long. Too small, too hungry, too human for this place. Some women throw themselves overboard, or try. You hear the splash before you hear the screams. Others drink seawater until their bodies shut down. It's not escape, it's control. One final decision in a world where choice has been ripped from them. Most don't get that chance. Most endure. Because what else is there to do? There's no word for what happens here that fits into ordinary language. Rape is too clinical, violation too soft. What happens is erasure, not just of safety, or privacy, or control, but of self. It's violence designed to linger, to echo, to breed silence long after the bruises fade, and it is never accidental. They don't spare the women. They target them, because they can. At first, the children cry. It's the only thing they know how to do. Infants scream from hunger, their voices thin and piercing, cutting through the thick, rotting air like needles. Mothers rock them in cramped arms, whispering broken fragments of lullabies too soft to comfort anyone, especially themselves. There's no milk, no dry cloth, no rest. Just heat and filth and the ever-present groan of the ship around them. The cries become background noise, not because they stop hurting, but because they're constant. And then, one by one, they stop. Infants go first. Their tiny bodies, never meant for salt-rusted chains or spoiled rice, wither fast. You see it in their faces. Eyes too large for skulls gone hollow, lips too dry to suckle. They don't thrash, they don't fight, they fade. Their mothers hold them even after the breathing ends, rocking against the curve of the hull with blank stares, as if the motion alone might reverse time, return something. But nothing comes back on this ship. No one says anything when the babies die. There's no wailing, no mourning. The grief is quiet, locked behind clenched jaws and downcast eyes. Mourning here is a luxury no one can afford. The sailors don't even glance twice when they remove the bodies. Just another item spoiled in the hold. Toddlers follow. They begin to understand that something is wrong, but not why. Their legs are too small to stretch fully, their heads too heavy to lift. They sit in silence, faces slack, their world reduced to darkness and skin and iron. Sometimes they cry out in their sleep. A sharp gasp, a sudden tremble, but they don't speak. They've forgotten what language sounds like. No one sings to them. No one has the strength to pretend. Some wander when they can, bare feet slipping over vomit-slick boards, eyes wide, fingers grasping for someone, anyone. A sister, maybe. A mother, a stranger who might smile. But the ship doesn't offer smiles, only shadows and sickness. Eventually, they stop wandering too. They curl up where they can and learn not to move. The older ones, the teenagers, stay quiet for other reasons. You can see the fear carved into their faces. Not new, not sudden. Old. Settled. They've seen too much already. Some try to protect the younger ones, shielding them with thin arms when the crew passes through, whispering soft words in dark corners. Others go cold, hardened. Their eyes look through people, past walls, beyond waves. They do what they're told, eat what they're given, sleep when the ship lets them. They aren't broken, not yet, but they're close. There are no lullabies here. No goodnight kisses, no stories told in hushed voices under stars. There is no later, no tomorrow. Only the chain clinking around an ankle, the soft thud of a body gone still, the cough that starts small and never stops. You can hear the children coughing in the dark. Their lungs weren't meant for this air. It's too thick, too hot, too full of other people's pain. The coughs echo until they're quieted by sleep, or fever, or death. Sometimes, a child will call out for a parent, not with words but with sound. A sharp cry, a reaching whimper, a single note of confusion and fear. It's worse than the screaming, because there's no one to answer. Not really. Even if their mother is right beside them, even if their father is still alive, there's nothing they can do. No hug, no explanation, no rescue. Just a hand reaching out in the dark, touching skin as damp and scared as their own. When a child dies, the crew shrugs. Less weight to carry, less food to waste. They don't pause, they don't record. Sometimes they throw the body into the sea before the mother knows. Sometimes the mother begs to go too. The ship doesn't slow. It keeps moving forward, pulled by profit, by cruelty, by wind. And the children, the ones who should have been the future, fade quietly into the wood. Sleep doesn't arrive gently here. It does not settle over the hold like a soft blanket or cradle your body in comfort. Sleep is snatched, stolen, wrestled from pain and noise and fear. It comes only when your body collapses from exhaustion, not when your mind is ready. You do not choose to rest. You surrender to it briefly, and only because the alternative is madness. There's no night beneath the deck, no stars to mark the passage of time, no moonlight slipping through the boards, just the same endless dark, always damp, always hot, always foul. Time bleeds into itself until you no longer know how many days you've been in motion. You only know that every moment your eyes are open, you're praying for one where they can close. But even when they do, the world doesn't fade. The bodies don't stop pressing into yours. The air doesn't become sweeter. It still smells like rot and fear and sweat and waste. Someone shifts in their chains, groaning. Someone vomits again, and the sound is so familiar now, It doesn't even make you flinch. Someone else wets themselves in their sleep, and the warmth spreads until it touches your hip, your thigh, your back. You move if you can. Usually, you can't. The rats come, whether you sleep or not. Fat from the dead, fearless in the dark. They climb over your limbs and nibble at wounds they think won't fight back. Sometimes they mistake the living for meat. You've seen them chewing at the heel of a sleeping man, tearing through soft skin like fruit. He didn't stir. He might have been dead already. Or maybe he was too tired to care. Your own dreams betray you. In those rare seconds, when your body manages to dip below the surface of wakefulness, your mind uncoils. And what rises is never gentle. You dream of walking, but you're still in chains. Of being home, but the sky is always red. Of your mother's voice, twisted and fading. Of drowning slowly in a sea that doesn't want your body, only your silence. You wake with a gasp, or a scream, or nothing at all. Some dream they've already died. They speak in their sleep to people who are no longer here. They whisper apologies, or lullabies, or names they no longer say out loud. You listen because it reminds you that they were someone once, because you were too. The crew doesn't care if you sleep. They only care that you move when commanded, that you live long enough to be sold, that your eyes open when it's time to be counted. There is no time set aside for rest, no hour of reprieve. You sleep when no one is shouting, when no one is vomiting, when no one nearby is dying, which is never, or almost never. The strongest ones, the ones who've survived longer, sleep with one eye half open, heads propped against the damp backs of others. They've learned the rhythm of suffering, when to let go, when to brace, when to slip into a space just wide enough for dreams and shallow enough to escape if the ship lurches or a guard calls. You learn too. You learn to fold your body just right, to ignore the pain in your spine, the bruises on your hips, the chains cutting into your skin. You learn to breathe only through your mouth to block the smell. You learn to keep your arms crossed, to protect your ribs, to keep the rats from crawling under your shirt. And still, sleep is never safe. It is never full. It never heals. It is a flicker, a gasp, a desperate trick of the body. But you take it anyway, because sleep, here, is survival. It doesn't happen all at once. You don't wake up and realize you're no longer the person you were. It's slower than that, a quiet unraveling, like being erased with fingers instead of fire. Your body begins to change. The first thing to go is your strength. At first, you blame the chains, the lack of space, the days without walking, but then you notice it's more than that. When the ship tosses and you try to brace yourself, your arms don't respond the way they used to. When food comes, your fingers tremble as they reach for the bowl. Your legs ache in strange ways, not from effort, but from the absence of it. Muscles soften, then shrink, then seem to vanish beneath your skin. What's left is brittle, hollow, a version of yourself that moves like it's underwater. Then the skin. It starts as a sting, tiny blisters rising where the chains bite, where sweat pools and never dries. You scratch in your sleep and wake to blood beneath your nails. Soon, it spreads, rashes that crack, wounds that won't close. The damp air eats away at your flesh, and the salt in your sweat only feeds the burning. Your skin becomes strange to you, slick, raw, foreign, like it belongs to someone else. Your joints stiffen next. You try to stretch your fingers and they resist. Your knees stay bent long after you try to straighten them. You shuffle instead of walking. When you shift in the dark, something inside your shoulder pops, and you bite your lip to keep from crying out. The pain is constant, but dull, like an echo of a life where motion meant freedom. Now, it means punishment. Your teeth begin to loosen. It starts with the bleeding. Gums red and tender, sore with every chew. You press your tongue against one tooth and feel it give, just slightly. A week later, it's gone. Spit out in the dark. No one notices. No one cares. Another follows. Then another. You tuck the pain away, swallow whatever blood you can. The crew above talks about scurvy, like it's a nuisance. To you, it feels like dying from the inside out. Your hair thins, not in patches, not all at once, but slowly, strands by the handful. You run your fingers through it and feel it come away like wet grass after a storm. Some around you are already bald. Others have sores where their braids used to be. You wonder if it will all fall out, and if it does, what you'll look like beneath it, whether there will be anything left to recognize. And the smell, your own smell, changes. You used to know the scent of your body. Earth, sweat, oil, the scent of work, of home. Now, it's decay. You smell like the hold, waste, fear, rot. You stop trying to wipe the filth from your skin. There's too much of it. There's nowhere to put it. You are soaked in it, shaped by it. It becomes part of your flesh, your breath, your memory. When you catch your reflection in a puddle, dark water pooled in a corner where rats drink, you barely register it as a face. Hollow cheeks, cracked lips, eyes too large. You stare, and something stares back, but it doesn't blink with your timing. It doesn't look familiar. You blink again, and the water ripples, and the face is gone. You don't speak of the changes aloud. No one does. What would you say? That you're dissolving? That you're disappearing from the outside in? Everyone around you already knows. They see it in your walk, your cough, the way your ribs press against your chest like scaffolding. They feel it in themselves. This ship is not a vessel. It's a mirror. A slow mirror that shows you who you are when everything else is stripped away. And you don't recognize what you've become. Not anymore. It starts in the corners of the mind, the places that used to be filled with memory, or laughter, or quiet thought, places you once went to rest. On this ship, those corners fill with noise. Not noise from outside, but from within. A buzzing that never stops, a name you can't remember but can't forget, a prayer caught halfway in your throat and looped so many times it turns to static. You see it in others before it reaches you. A man who stares at nothing for hours, eyes wide, unmoving, not blinking. Another who mutters in a language you don't speak, or maybe he doesn't either, his voice caught between chant and weeping. A woman rocking slowly against the hull, knees pulled to her chest, humming a tune so soft and steady, it carves itself into the dark like a knife. She never stops, even when they beat her for the noise. Some scream, not once, not briefly, but again and again, until the sound becomes part of the ship, until it shakes your ribs more than the creak of the wood. High, hoarse, wordless cries. Some are calling for help. Some are calling for gods. Some don't even know they're screaming anymore. Their mouths open because it's the only way to stop the pressure inside from splitting them in half. The crew grows tired of it quickly. They gag them when they can. Sometimes they tie them down. Other times, they don't bother. Just shove them up the stairs and over the edge. One less problem to manage. One less voice in the dark. You see it happen, the splash, the silence after, and the absence that follows. Madness doesn't care about strength. It doesn't come only for the weak. It finds the ones who held on too long. The ones who tried to stay sane by counting the days, by reciting stories, by remembering the faces of loved ones. It finds them because memory here is dangerous. Hope here is weight. It breaks the mind open like a rotten fruit. Some whisper to spirits, not softly, not privately. Loud, wild conversations with people who aren't there. They call out names no one else knows. They argue. They beg. One woman speaks to her mother every night, describes the ship in detail, describes the pain, and then she laughs like she's home. until she's not. Others break without sound. They stop moving, stop responding. Their eyes dull, their limbs go stiff. They're alive technically, but gone in every other way. When food comes, they don't reach for it. When rats crawl across their chests, they don't flinch. You don't know whether to envy them or fear them. They've escaped something, but they've also vanished. Then there are the jumpers. It doesn't take much. A rush toward the railing, a brief struggle, and then nothing but air. A splash, shouts from the crew, a pause, laughter. No one dives in after them. No one throws a rope. There is no rescue. Only the slap of waves closing over a soul who decided that whatever was in the water could not be worse than what was on this ship. And sometimes they don't jump. They're pushed. By desperation. By confusion. By someone else who slipped too far into terror. You've seen it. Two figures wrestling near the edge. One pleading, the other blank. Eyed, both screaming. And then one falls. You never know which. You never ask. The madness here isn't an accident. It's designed. The ship is a machine built not just to carry bodies, but to grind down minds. Every groan of timber, every cry, unanswered. Every hour spent shackled to death and filth chips away at reason. It doesn't need to be fast, it just needs to be steady. Because madness, like the sea, always finds a way in. The sea waits, quiet and endless. It doesn't judge. It doesn't speak. It just sways, dark and deep, and opens itself to those who leap. They don't always do it quickly. Some stare at the waves for days, eyes searching the horizon, like they might find home in a ripple. Others whisper to themselves, lips cracked, voices lost in wind. You watch them. Not because you hope to stop them, but because part of you understands. Because part of you envies them. They don't scream when they go, not usually. They run or crawl if their legs are too weak, and they find the edge. The ship may be high, the sea vast, but the body knows when it's had enough. Some don't even look down. They just fall forward like a breath let go, and the water welcomes them. You'd think the crew would care, that they'd guard the edges, that they'd panic when someone jumps, when money walks off the side of the ship and vanishes. But they've learned to shrug. They've learned to laugh. Sometimes they shoot into the waves, not to kill, but to make a point. Bullets fizz into the water. No bodies float up. No one returns. The sea keeps its dead. Others don't leave it to chance. They tie rocks to their ankles. Scrap metal, chain fragments. Anything heavy enough to pull them down fast. You see them disappear so cleanly, the splash is barely heard. You imagine the silence beneath the surface, the rush of cool, unspoiled water, the arms of the ancestors waiting to gather what the ship tried to erase. Because that's what they believe, the ones who jump. That the sea is not an ending but a passage. That beneath those waves is memory, spirit, home. That in drowning, there is freedom. In falling, there is return. That the water remembers what the ship tries to forget. Not all who want to jump get the chance. Chains make it difficult. So do the guards. So do the others. The ones too scared to follow, who cling to the desperate hope that surviving will mean something. You've seen people held back by their peers, grabbed by the shoulders, pleaded with, shouted at. But when someone truly wants to go, there's no stopping them. The ship isn't built to contain a soul that's already left its body. Some succeed in pairs, lovers, siblings, friends who lock arms and run together, choosing the deep over the whip, the salt over the chains. You hear about it in the hold. Stories passed from lip to lip like prayers. They say their ghosts swim freely now, that they sing beneath the waves, that they pull at the rudder and curse the sails, that they are not lost, only returned. The crew has their own stories. They joke that the ones who jump are weak, that they didn't have the guts to survive. But sometimes You catch a flicker of something else in their faces. Something they don't say. Fear, maybe. Because the sea is the only thing on this ship they don't control. They can beat a man, starve a woman, silence a child, but they can't stop the ocean from taking who it wants, and the ocean wants. Some say it smells different after someone jumps, that the breeze shifts, that the waves slap the hull harder, that the ship lists, just slightly, like it knows it lost something sacred. You don't know if it's true, but you like to believe it, because it means the sea is watching. It means the dead are not forgotten. It means someone, somewhere, got free. It always starts with a whisper, passed from mouth to mouth in the dark, in a language the crew doesn't understand and doesn't care to. A glance held too long, a hand squeezed in secret, a shift in breath when the hatch creaks open. You can feel it building in the silence, in the way men stop crying and start watching, in the way women begin to sit straighter despite their bruises, in the tension that hums beneath the suffering like a wire pulled tight. Rebellion is not a fantasy here. It is a calculation, a cold measure of odds. The crew has weapons, the crew has power, the crew has freedom of movement, but they are few. And the chained? Hundreds, packed in tight, broken, yes, starved, yes, but alive. And the thing about pain is that it burns everything down but the will to fight. Sometimes the plan is small. A nail hidden in a fold of cloth, a loosened shackle, a stolen key passed from hand to hand. Sometimes it's just a scream at the right moment to draw a guard's attention while someone else strikes. And sometimes it's everything at once. Screams, blows, fire, blood. A ship turned upside down in minutes. You don't always hear the beginning, but you hear the chaos. The thunder of feet above deck, the shouts of men suddenly unsure of their own dominance. The clatter of blades dropped and picked up again. The scream of a sailor as he's dragged below. The roar of a crowd that's decided dying free is better than living chained. Some ships were taken. Some captains never made it to the next port. There are records, written by men who lived to tell the tale, though not without fear. They speak of revolts swift and brutal, of women who smuggled knives in their hair, of elders who faked sickness, then struck with iron nails when guards came close, of young men who took bullets and kept moving, of decks soaked in blood not from the enslaved, but from those who once called themselves masters. But those are the exceptions. Most uprisings end the same way. In silence, in gunpowder, in fire and steel. The crew has muskets, they have blades, they have the high ground, and most of all, they have no need for restraint. They don't try to reclaim order, they try to make a warning. They kill quickly, and then slowly. They don't just shoot, they torture. They make examples. The one who started it, tied to the mast, and flayed until you can see bone. The woman who screamed in defiance, hung from the rigging, left to swing in the wind while the others are forced to watch. The rest? Beaten, starved, forced to carry the bodies of their comrades up the stairs and toss them to the sea. Sometimes, the bodies are never recovered, just left to rot where they fell, reminders carved in flesh. But even knowing that, knowing the odds, knowing the cost, some still rise. Because rebellion is not always about winning. It's about declaring, if only for a moment, that you were not a thing, not a number, not cargo, that you were a person, that you struck back, that you screamed in a world built to silence you. And even if your blood slicks the deck, even if the crew survives and the ship sails on, your spirit lingers. Because rebellion, on this sea, is memory that refuses to drown. It comes first as a scent, faint, almost imagined, wet soil, green things, smoke, the memory of life that isn't the ship. You breathe it in before you even see the coast, unsure if it's real or if your mind is playing one last cruel trick. Then someone shouts. The hold stirs. Faces lift. The chains rattle with a different kind of urgency. Land. For a heartbeat, you forget the weight of your body. You forget the sores on your skin, the taste of rot in your mouth, the ache carved deep into your joints. You rise as far as the chains will let you and crane your neck toward the sliver of light spilling through the hatch. The ship groans as it slows, and above deck, footsteps race back and forth. The crew is shouting commands, pulling ropes, preparing. You can feel it. The shift. The moment when sea becomes shore. Some begin to cheer, quietly at first. A few raise trembling hands in thanks to gods they hadn't dared speak to for weeks. Others weep. Loud, open sobs that rise from bellies hollowed by hunger and loss. You see it in their eyes. The fragile, flickering hope that this nightmare is about to end. That land means freedom. That whatever waits beyond the horizon cannot be worse than what has already been survived. But you know better. You've seen the way the crew moves. Tight-lipped, methodical, without the drunken swagger they carried in the middle of the voyage. Their fear is gone now, replaced by something sharper. Purpose. You hear new voices on the deck, foreign words barked like transactions, the clink of coins, the sound of horses, and suddenly, the scent of land no longer smells like hope. It smells like sail. The closer the shore comes, the more the dread sinks into your bones. You remember the stories. You remember what the older ones whispered before they stopped speaking altogether. This is not the end. This is the middle. The ship was only the gate. The real chains are waiting inland. Some go silent. The ones who cheered lower their heads. A boy starts clawing at the boards, trying to find a way through the cracks, as if he can disappear back into the sea. A woman pulls at her hair, rocking back and forth, her voice gone to a rasp. You can feel the grief settle back over the hold like a second skin, a familiar weight, like breath you'd tried to hold for too long. You think of the ones who died along the way, the ones who jumped, the ones who screamed, the ones who stopped speaking. You envy them again, because whatever hell they faced, at least it was over. You are still moving, still owned, still heading towards something unknown, and in that not knowing is a terror deeper than anything the ship ever gave you. When they open the hatch, the light stabs your eyes. You're herded upward, blinking, filthy, limbs stiff from confinement. The air is thicker here, warmer, sweet with the scent of fruit and salt and sweat, and beneath it all, the iron reek of the market. You're not the first to arrive. You won't be the last. People line the dock, some dressed in finery, some with ledgers, some with whips. You are not greeted. You are inspected. Fingers prod your ribs. Mouths spit words you can't understand. Some laugh. Others look bored. A man pinches your chin and lifts your head like he's judging a horse. Another pokes your belly with the butt of a cane, nods, moves on. You're told to stand, to turn, to open your mouth. The crew counts you again, but not like before. This time they count in money. Someone near you vomits from fear. Another collapses. No one helps. This is not freedom. This is inventory, arriving at its next warehouse. And the land that once smelled like salvation, now it tastes like ash. They strip you again. Whatever scraps you had left, rags, dignity, memory, are peeled off like old skin. They smear oil across your body, thick and sticky, meant to make your skin shine under the sun, not to comfort, not to clean, just to catch a buyer's eye, to highlight the muscle, or what's left of it, to make you glisten like meat on display. You are told to stand tall, but your legs shake. You haven't walked freely in weeks. Your knees threaten to buckle with every step, but there's no room for weakness here. The slaver's voice cuts through the morning air, sharpened by practice, buttered with false charm, as he rattles off your supposed virtues. Age, strength, breeding potential. It doesn't matter if the words are lies. You are not here to speak. You are here to be spoken for. The block is a raised platform, wooden, hot under your bare feet. It creaks beneath you as if the very structure recoils from what it's being used for. People crowd below, white men in coats, some with ledgers, others with canes. A few women too, fanning themselves, eyes sharp. They do not see you, not really. They see a body, a price, a task to be performed, a problem to be solved. One of them calls out for you to open your mouth. You hesitate. The slaver slaps the back of your head, and your jaw jerks open. Fingers pry your lips apart, yellow nails scraping your gums. They count your teeth. They smell your breath. They check for disease not with concern but with calculation. A rotten tooth means lower value. A strong bite means possible defiance. The man laughs when you flinch, says something about animal instincts. Another gestures. You're told to jump. You try. The crowd watches your body rise and fall like they're testing a spring. They nod. They grunt. They point. Someone asks about your temperament. The slaver lies with confidence, says you're docile, easy to train. He does not mention the nights you refused food, the mornings you prayed instead of working, the times you stared straight into his eyes and didn't blink. Someone else runs a hand down your spine, over your shoulders, across your thighs, a touch that isn't touch, a violation disguised as appraisal. You feel it but cannot recoil. There is no place to go. The platform is your world now. Beneath it, only bids. Above it, only sun. The haggling starts. Words fly like flies over an open wound. Numbers exchanged in casual tones, as though buying a chicken or a barrel of sugar. Your worth debated out loud, stripped down to coin and labor. One man argues you look too thin. Another says you'll fatten up. A third nods and offers slightly more, citing good breeding hips with a smirk. You understand enough to know they are not speaking to you. They are speaking about you, as though you are already theirs. The gavel comes down. You are sold. Not to salvation, not to sanctuary, to another unknown. A plantation, perhaps. A house. A mine. Whatever it is, it will not belong to you. You will not walk freely there. You will not sleep with both eyes closed. You will not call anyone friend, unless in whispers. You are property now, and the man who paid for you does not expect a return on kindness, only labor. They lead you away from the block, chains jingling in rhythm with your hollow steps. Behind you, another body climbs up, blinking into the same sun, oiled and trembling. You do not look back. You do not need to. You already know what comes next. You're not sold alone. No one is. The block is just the middle act in a longer play of loss. Behind it are groups, clumps of families, broken clusters, trying to hold on to something. Mothers with arms wrapped around daughters. Brothers standing shoulder to shoulder, saying nothing because words would break them. Fathers with trembling hands on tiny shoulders, telling their sons to be brave. Everyone trying to look unremarkable, to seem strong, because weakness means cheaper. Weakness means risk. Weakness means separation. It doesn't matter. The buyers walk among you like selecting fruit from a crowded stall. They point. They nod. They raise fingers. 1, 2, sometimes 3 if they want a match set. But it's not up to you. You don't go where your people go. You go where the coin says you go. Your name is still in your mouth when they pull your sister from your arms. She screams and they strike her, not hard, but hard enough to make her stumble. You lurch forward and feel the cold bite of metal against your neck. The man who owns the chain doesn't even glance at you. Your grief is not unique, it's noise. He's heard it 1,000 times before, and will hear it 1,000 more. They take your mother next. You see her mouth something to you. 3 syllables, maybe your name, maybe a prayer. And then she's gone, swallowed by the crowd, dragged toward another cart, another plantation, another fate. You try to memorize the color of her dress, the shape of her back, the way she moved when she was still yours. But already it's fading, like a dream burned away by morning. A boy nearby won't stop crying. His father has been sold to someone riding east. The boy is staying here, in the port, with a man who smells like tobacco and vinegar. The crew offers no explanation. The buyers offer no apology. A child is not a person. A father is not a man. They are parts, inventory, easily separated. You ask where your people are going. No one answers. You beg to be kept together. They laugh, not cruelly, casually, as if the idea is absurd, as if family were a luxury, a request too fragile for the weight of commerce. They tell you names don't matter, that you'll get a new one soon, something easier to pronounce, something branded on a ledger instead of whispered under stars. You say your brother's name over and over under your breath. You say it until it sounds strange in your mouth, until you fear forgetting it, until you fear remembering it. A woman next to you is carrying a baby. The buyer wants her, but not the child. Too young, he says. Too needy. The man selling her doesn't flinch. He grabs the child and hands it off to another handler, like passing a satchel. The woman screams until her throat is raw. They gag her. The baby is still crying as it disappears, lost in a sea of limbs and shouts. You see your people going in all directions, scattered like leaves in a storm, and you know you will never find them again. Not here, not now, maybe not ever. You try to hold them in your head. Faces, voices, the warmth of a hand in yours. But already it's slipping. Already the present is louder than the past. The man who bought you says your name wrong. You don't correct him. It doesn't matter anymore. That name was taken with the others. All that's left now is memory. And memory will have to be enough. The wagon ride to the plantation feels like the ship all over again. No sea, no salt in the air, but the same stillness in your limbs, the same weight pressing down on your chest, the same knowledge that wherever you're going, it won't be home. You're chained to 2 others, neither of whom speaks your language, but their silence feels familiar. Their eyes are low, their bodies still, and you know that everything that could be said has already been stripped from them. When you arrive, the sun is sharper. The air smells like mud and sugar. Rows of canes stretch farther than your eyes can follow, and near the edge of the field stands the house, tall, white, and watching. Your new master doesn't greet you. He doesn't need to. A man like him doesn't shake hands with property. They call your name, or what they think is your name, but butchered, bent. Then they shake their heads. Too hard to say, too foreign, too yours. You're told you'll answer to something else now. A short word, usually from the Bible, or some English animal. Something they can bark across a field, something they can remember when you're being whipped. You try not to flinch the first time they use it. But your name is not the only thing they take. They tell you who your God is now. He is pale, hanging on a wooden cross in the big house. His name is spoken in sharp English syllables and carved into the Sunday silence. Your own gods, the ones you prayed to in the dark belly of the ship, are forbidden. Their names carry punishment. Their songs are outlawed. Their symbols buried beneath the fields. Your tongue rebels in your mouth. The words you've known since childhood dry out and curl at the edges. You try to speak to one of the others brought with you, but she's been here longer, and when you greet her in your own tongue, she only shakes her head, glances around, and whispers, "No, talk that way." You feel something small and necessary break inside you. They give you rules. when to speak, when to kneel, when to look a white man in the eye, which is almost never, when to eat, how to sleep, what corner of the field belongs to you. And in each rule, a threat, the switch, the whip, the chain, a new set of consequences, built not to guide, but to crush. They're not trying to train you. They're trying to erase you. You are not beginning again. You are being rewritten. The clothing they give you doesn't fit. It scratches at your skin and clings in the wrong places. The food is unfamiliar, bland, heavy in your belly. The quarters are cramped, too many bodies pressed into a single wooden shack. At night, you hear people pray in hushed tones to gods they pretend they've forgotten. Others cry out names in their sleep, names the day has forbidden. You don't speak unless you're spoken to. You don't ask questions. You learn the rhythm of the bell, the shape of a plow handle, the sting of sun on your neck. You stop dreaming. Or maybe you still do, but the dreams are made of fire and silence now, and you never remember them when you wake. Sometimes, you try to say your old name in the dark. Just once. A whisper into the crook of your arm, so low even you can barely hear it. But it feels strange now, like trying to hold water, like a song you used to know but can't hum without crying. You are not lost. You are overwritten, line by line, until even your silence belongs to someone else. You thought the ship was the worst it could get. The chains, the stink, the dark. You told yourself if you survived that, anything afterward would be less. But the ship had an end. It had a destination. The plantation does not. Here, there is no arrival, only continuation. The fields stretch in every direction, rows and rows of sugarcane or cotton or tobacco, depending on where you've landed. At dawn, you walk into them. At dusk, you crawl out. In between, the sun burns your back, the soil cuts your feet, and the overseer's eyes cut through anything else you might have carried with you. There's no shade, no pause, no silence that isn't filled with threat. The air is thicker here, swollen with heat and sweat, and the groans of people pretending not to feel pain. You wake before the sky changes color. You eat in gulps if you eat at all. Then the bell, the line, the tools, the work. Your hands blister and your muscles cramp, and it doesn't matter if you're tired or sick or bleeding. You keep going, because stopping means punishment, and punishment is worse than exhaustion. You begin to understand the ship wasn't transport, it was instruction. The ship taught you that your body was no longer yours. The plantation confirms it. The overseers patrol on horseback, boots caked in the dirt you spend all day bending over. They carry whips, but it's not the weapon that terrifies you. It's the way they smile when they use it. They treat pain like punctuation. A mark at the end of every sentence. A way to keep rhythm. You flinch before they strike. They notice. Sometimes they strike just because they can. There is no privacy. No moment when you are unseen. You urinate beside the cane. You cry into your arm. You sleep beside strangers who have no more to give than you do. The shacks at night are not homes. They're holding pens. You don't decorate. You don't rest. You lie down and shut your eyes because your body demands it, and because you'll die faster if you don't. There's no calendar here, just the weather and the harvest. Rain means mud, not relief. Dry spells mean longer hours. Sundays mean church, not rest. A white man tells you about God while his hands count your output. He tells you about heaven while his boots crush your shadow. You nod when he speaks. You memorize the hymns. You don't believe a word. But pretending keeps you alive. The children don't play here. They mimic work until they're old enough to do it. No one teaches them to read. No one tells them their own stories. They learn quickly how to be quiet, how to obey, how to shrink themselves to avoid notice. They watch their parents get beaten and learn not to cry too loud. Their innocence is not stolen. It's never given the chance to grow. Sometimes, the plantation changes owners. A new name on the gate, a new man in the big house. But the routine stays the same. The same bell, the same whip, the same hole in your stomach at night. You dream of escape, but you don't speak of it. Not here. The walls have ears. The trees do too. There are dogs for runners, guns for the bold. You begin to forget the sound of your own voice when it's not answering a command. You remember the ship not as a journey, but as the blueprint for this place. The plantation is still floating, just rooted in dirt instead of water. And it will never dock, because the voyage, for you, never ended. This wasn't madness. It wasn't accident. It wasn't chaos. It was a system, deliberate, calculated, and costed down to the nail. Every chain, every whip, every drop of sweat that fell from your back was part of an equation written in ink by men in clean coats, thousands of miles away. They never saw your face. They didn't have to. They saw numbers, weights, ages, output. Your suffering was not a byproduct. It was a line item. Ships were built not for safety, but for volume. Blueprints carved up the belly of a vessel like meat, every inch measured to see how many bodies it could carry before the risk of death outweighed the profit. Not to prevent death, just to make sure enough survived to sell. They packed you in not because they were careless, but because they were precise. Less air meant more bodies. More bodies meant more gold. Men in wigs and powdered faces sat in rooms and called it commerce. They formed companies for it, royal ones, chartered ones. They gave them flags and fleets and tax breaks. Investors lined up. Shareholders smiled. The trade in human lives was dressed in the language of enterprise, routes and shipments and dividends. There were spreadsheets before there were spreadsheets. Ledgers so thorough they counted not just who was sold, but who died, who ran, who resisted. Even rebellion had a cost calculation. Torture wasn't just permitted, it was budgeted. The lash wasn't punishment, it was policy. An efficient way to reduce delay, to ensure obedience, to protect the bottom line. The whips were ordered in bulk, the chains forged with contracts. Each plantation accounted for their tools of domination the way a merchant counts barrels. When an enslaved person was whipped to death, it was noted as a loss, but rarely a failure. There were always more. They insured you. Your body had value, and they protected that value with paperwork. If you drowned during transport, they filed a claim. If you sickened, they logged it. If the ship caught fire, they collected. The insurance did not cover your pain, it covered your price. You were not just property. You were a commodity, backed by law, financed by banks, supported by crowns and churches and armies. The brutality was systematic. The architecture of fields, the design of markets, the language of sale, it was all built to function like a machine. You were born into it, bought into it, bred into it. Generations not by chance, but by design. Children were forecast. Pregnancies were tracked. Mothers were labeled according to the value of their wombs. A baby born healthy wasn't a gift. It was an asset. The system stretched continents. Africa, Europe, the Americas. 3 points on a triangle drawn in blood. Cloth and rum flowed one way, bodies another, sugar and gold the third. Fortunes were built on that geometry. Cities rose. Empires expanded. Even nations that claimed morality still touched the profits. Even those who said they disapproved still wore the cotton, drank the coffee, poured the sugar. The economy didn't run despite slavery. It ran because of it. And everyone who mattered knew. Not in secret, not in shadow, but openly. In port towns and capital halls, in pamphlets and newspapers. The language was clinical, neutral. civilized men debating the weight of flesh, how much labor one man could give before he broke, how much food was necessary to keep a woman alive without spending too much, what color skin fetched what price in which city. It was efficient. It was vast. And it worked exactly as intended, because cruelty wasn't a flaw in the system. It was the system. They told you to bow your head, not to your ancestors, not to the gods you knew, but to a man nailed to wood, bleeding beneath a sky you didn't recognize. They pointed at his ribs, at the thorns, at the sorrow carved in paint. They said he died for your sins, that his pain was your redemption, that obedience was holy. And then they sold you anyway. The first time you saw a priest bless a slave ship, you didn't know what the gesture meant. He stood tall on the dock in white robes, swinging incense over chains and shackles. His lips moved in quiet rhythm. His fingers traced the sign of the cross, and the sailors bowed their heads in respect. Not for you, not for the souls below deck, but for the voyage, for the business, for the safety of profit. He didn't flinch when the screams rose from the hold. He finished his blessing and walked away. In the colonies, they told you church was mandatory. That Sunday was the Lord's Day. That work would cease only long enough for your spirit to be reshaped. They sat you in the back, sometimes outside, sometimes in the dirt. They read from a Bible, in a language you couldn't speak, but the words were clear in tone. Submit, obey, serve. They spoke of slaves and masters as if it were nature, as if it were divine. You weren't allowed to read the scripture yourself. You were taught only what they wanted you to hear, that good servants earned heaven, that bad ones earned the whip. That salvation came not through freedom, but through faith kept in silence. You were told your suffering was temporary, that God saw your tears, but only if you stayed in line. The sermons were not about justice. They were about control. Verses were chosen carefully. Servants, obey your earthly masters. He who knows his master's will and does not do it will be beaten with many stripes. They repeated these with conviction, with fire, with a smile. They told you this life was only a test, that your soul didn't belong to you, that rebellion wasn't just disobedience, it was sin. They called your music pagan, your rituals wicked, your prayers to old gods were mocked or punished. If you danced, it was devilry. If you spoke in your own tongue, it was defiance. But when they whipped you until your back opened, they said it was love, correction, mercy, in motion. And yet, they built chapels on plantations, painted angels on the ceilings, sang hymns that rang sweet through morning fog, while bodies bled in the cane fields. Their God was carved into the gates of the estates that starved children. His name was stitched into the flags that flew over ports, soaked in grief. They told you heaven would be your reward, but they made sure hell looked just like the world you were trapped in. Some enslaved people believed anyway, found their own meaning in the stories, took the songs, and made them mournful, made them powerful, found in Moses not the lawgiver, but the liberator, found in Jesus not the lamb, but the man who overturned tables, found in the Psalms a voice for the broken. But they did this in whispers, in the corners of night, beneath stars that remembered older names, because the religion they were given was not meant to lift them, it was meant to bind them, and the men who preached it didn't carry crosses. They carried whips. They wanted obedience to be your inheritance, that even your silence would pass down like a surname, that your children would be born bent, your grandchildren broken without ever knowing why. They built the system with generations in mind. Shackles made of steel, but also of fear and fatigue. They counted on time to erase your fire, but it didn't. It sparked, and in some, it burned. The rebellion didn't end with the ship. The voyage may have brought you across the ocean, but it couldn't carry away your memory, or your rage, or your will. Resistance bloomed where they never looked for it. Beneath trees, behind sugarcane, in songs sung off-key on purpose. Sometimes it bloomed loudly, sometimes with blood. Queen Nanny of the Maroons listened to the forest. She moved through mountains like wind, uncatchable, unknowable, and always one step ahead. They called her a witch because they couldn't understand how a black woman could fight and win again and again without an army, without a map. But her weapon wasn't magic. It was memory. It was strategy. It was the refusal to be a footnote. Toussaint Louverture studied the language of his captors and rewrote it with fire. He wore their uniforms and then burned their plantations. They made him a coachman. He made himself a general. He built a revolution from the bones of the enslaved and carved a new nation into the land that had once been soaked with screams. Haiti rose not because they were freed, but because they made themselves free. There were others, hundreds, thousands. Names you'll never know because they were not written down, because they didn't lead nations, only escapes, only fires, only uprisings that lasted minutes, but meant everything. The man who slipped poison into the overseer's stew, the girl who set fire to the cane field during harvest, the mother who taught her son to run when he was old enough to walk. They hid blades in bundles of cloth, messages in beadwork, directions in lullabies. Every gesture was a gamble. Every whisper was a rebellion in miniature. But they did it anyway. Not because they expected to win, but because they could not let the world keep turning without resistance. Sometimes it worked. Plantations burned. Owners fled. Sometimes they carved free communities in the wilderness. Hidden villages that survived on secrecy and sheer will. They called them maroon societies. Safe for a night, a month, a lifetime if they were lucky. Places where drums beat without permission and laughter didn't cost blood. But sometimes it failed. Sometimes the rebellion was met with fire hotter than any forge. Whole families killed, limbs taken, tongues cut out, fields soaked not with rain, but with vengeance. They wanted to make examples, to crush the idea before it spread. But they never could, because resistance doesn't die. It adapts. It became gospel music and coded quilts. It became drum rhythms that told stories without words. It became the Underground Railroad, Harriet's lantern cutting through night. It became black churches preaching freedom with fire in their throats. It became the blues, the shout, the raised fist, the riot, the march. You were never meant to survive, but you did. And more than that, you fought. You can't hear it at first, but if you stand by the water long enough on the coast of Ghana or Jamaica or Georgia and close your eyes, you might feel it. The slow, deep groan of timber that no longer floats, the echo of chains rattling where wind now whistles. The ship is gone, they say. Sank, dismantled, rotted into legend. But it left something behind. The sound still lives in the current. It moves in patterns carved by bodies thrown overboard, in the cold pull of tides shaped by blood. The sea remembers weight. It remembers the names swallowed before they reached land, the ones shouted in agony, the ones whispered before jumping, the ones never spoken again. You carry them without realizing. Your name might not be yours. It might belong to a plantation ledger, to a ship manifest, to a man who bought your ancestor and forgot him before nightfall. It may have been given with force, enforced with violence, passed down like a scar that became a surname. You say it without thinking, spell it without knowing, but it hums with a history that isn't gone, just silenced. The soil knows too. The cotton fields where laughter now rings still carry ash in their roots. The sugarcane rustles different in certain winds. The footprints didn't vanish. They were paved over, built on, hidden beneath shopping malls and highways and manicured lawns. But when it rains, the mud rises strange, rich, red, reminding. In the cities that profited, the wealth remains. Brick buildings that once held auctions now host weddings. The banks that insured voyages still lend. Universities that taught traders now hand out degrees. Names, etched in marble, belong to men who counted humans like cattle and wrote poetry in the same breath. The ship still sails, not with sails or salt, but with laws, with borders, with prisons that echo with the same logic. Containment, control, cheap labor. It sails in policies written in sanitized language. It sails in schools where the story starts with abolition instead of chains. It sails in neighborhoods cut by red lines, invisible to the naked eye, but carved deep into opportunity. It sails every time someone says, "That was so long ago," as if time heals what it refuses to name, as if centuries of theft dissolve just because the ink on the page has dried, as if the whip's absence means the trauma has left. But the ship doesn't need an ocean anymore. It has found new ways to float, through silence, through ignorance, through the myth of neutrality. Yet still, there is resistance. In songs that carry the old rhythms, even if the tongue has changed. In art that stitches pain into beauty, without softening it. In marches, in mourning, in names written on cardboard and shouted into the streets. The descendants of the chained have never stopped naming what the world tried to forget. They walk through cities built by their ancestors' sweat and demand recognition. They write books. They raise fists. They teach their children the stories buried under centuries of soot and sugar. They stand at the edge of the sea and say the names out loud again, even if they have to make them up, even if the names were stolen. The ship tried to erase them, but they survived. And now they remember, louder than ever. You wouldn't have made it. Not past the first blow that came without warning. Not past the fire swallowing your village. The screams of kin as strangers dragged them through dust. You wouldn't have lasted the march. Bare feet shredded by stone and thorn, wrists rubbed raw by iron, thirst clawing at your throat with every mile. The sun would have broken you before the coast ever came into view. You wouldn't have made it through the fortress, through the door of no return. The stench, the silence, the women crying into stone, the men praying to gods who stopped answering. The dark cell where names faded and time stopped. The waiting, the knowing that no one was coming to stop this, that the only escape was death, and even that wasn't guaranteed. You wouldn't have made it onto the ship. The heat below deck would have folded your lungs inside out. You would have gagged on the air, thick with vomit, feces, decay, and begged to be let out before you even understood what out meant. The chains would have bent your spine, the cramped planks grinding into your skin until you forgot what upright felt like. You would have cried for your mother until your voice broke, and then kept crying in silence. You wouldn't have made it through the days where food came late and rotten, where water tasted like rust and illness bloomed in every open wound. You would have flinched at every scream, every groan, every slap of leather against flesh, and thought it could be your last. The rats, the sores, the fever dreams. The darkness where the dead stayed too long. You wouldn't have made it on the block. Not naked, not inspected like cattle, not told to jump, smile, show your teeth. You wouldn't have survived the sale, being handed over like currency, marched away while the rest of your family vanished into the dust. A new name spoken at you in a language you didn't know. A master who didn't care whether you had a soul. A contract you never signed but couldn't escape. You wouldn't have lasted the fields. The whip for rhythm, the bell for life. Your muscles would have torn beneath the sun. You would have collapsed before noon. You would have prayed for rain that never came, cursed the soil that gave you nothing but broken fingernails. You would have tried to run, maybe once, and when they caught you, you would have never tried again. You wouldn't have made it. But they did. Somehow, through blood and bone and hunger and despair, they made it. They found ways to hold pieces of themselves even as everything else was stripped away. They sang under their breath. They braided messages into hair. They taught their children how to survive in a world built to erase them. They remembered, when remembering was dangerous, when silence was safer. They made families out of fragments, carved joy from scraps, told stories by firelight that weren't meant to last but did. They fought when it meant death, when it meant pain, when it meant freedom for someone else instead of themselves. They jumped, they ran, they rebelled. They built churches and buried ancestors and danced when no one was watching, or even when they were. They spoke in code, prayed in stolen moments, resisted in ways too quiet for history books to hear. You wouldn't have lasted a day, but they lasted centuries. And what they endured didn't just scar the world, it shaped it. The wealth they created still circulates, the nations they built still stand, the music they made still pulses. Their blood still moves through bodies that walk streets once barred to them, that speak truths once silenced, that dare to ask what comes next. They were not broken. They were forged. And because they lived, so do you.